trauma, terror, and trepidation, the unholy trinity of my daddy's youth. I didn't always understand it. Took me a long time to see it for what it was, 'cause I'd been lied to my whole life. But if you're going to get a true picture of how I was raised, I got to tell you about Mom and Daddy. After all, it's their doing, and you're going to need the backstory. My daddy grew up in Madison County, Iowa. That's right, the one with the bridges. He was the sixth of 7 children raised on a beautiful 100-acre Iowa farm in a tight-knit community in Webster Township. The year was 1914. In 1928, when it seemed like nothing could go wrong in the world, his father bought a hardware store in town. From ironing boards and truck tires to cook stoves and clothespins, there was a little bit of just about everything in that store. The family split their time between the store in town and the farm where they lived about 6 miles away. The few pictures I have of his childhood reflect a pretty good life. He was 14 years old when he quit school to work full-time with his father. That was a very good year. He was 15 years old when terror struck as the stock market crashed in 1929 and the whole world lost their fortunes. That was a very uncertain year. He was 16 years old when his father went bankrupt and he watched him break under the trauma of losing his business. That was a very bad year. Trepidation that robbed their family of what little they had left would take another 5 long and miserable years to do its worst. First, sending his father to the Clarinda State Hospital in 1934 when he finally broke under the pressure of empty pockets and empty fields. Then came the auction sale of the family farm in 1935. At 40 cents on the dollar, it was just this side of bank foreclosure. When it was all over, Walter's parents were able to get out from under the debt they had created. Many of their neighbors weren't so fortunate. That pretty good life ended as they packed a whole lot of heartache into a decade of loss and humiliation. He talked about it just once. His name was Walter Marion Phillips. I called him Daddy. The 1930s came in like a freaked-out, strung-out, maxed-out, drunken Santa Claus hauling a nasty bag of surprises that nobody wanted. Sticks and coal had nothing on the stuff that came tumbling out of that sack of shit, and it was about to fuck up the whole world. The boom and prosperity of the roaring 20s had roared right by most American farmers. Times were desperate, but the folks in Washington who could actually do something about it weren't paying a lick of attention. Nobody seemed to give a good goddamn. Mama Earth got pimped out and sold for $1.25 an acre to unproven farmers who couldn't plow her under fast enough. So in the wind, they soon reaped the whirlwind as a monster rose up in mile-high walls of dust, black as sin, looking like the end of the world. Trucks got blown 30 feet down the road, and chickens went to roost in the middle of the day. Half of Oklahoma picked up and blew straight into Iowa cornfields where my daddy lived. This was the drought of the 1930s, and it left nearly nothing to eat for man nor beast. The one time he talked about it, Daddy said that livestock wandered around half blind, bawling in hunger. He said you couldn't believe what you've seen. Made the daytime so dark you had to turn the lights on like it was the middle of the night. The Dust Bowl had arrived. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, may have been a foreign notion at the time, but it was alive and well nonetheless. Domestic violence, murder, suicide, they's far more common than anybody wanted to admit. Fields went fallow, tiny beds went empty, hearts went hollow, and families went homeless. Some farmers strategically positioned machine guns to keep authorities off their land, fighting to stay in homes their grandparents had built. Bank robberies and midnight livestock thievery became as common as the sunrise. while farmers, hanging themselves from their barn rafters, elicited less and less surprise from communities already shock-ridden and broken. Desperate men gathered in mobs trying to prevent foreclosure sales called penny auctions, where an entire mortgage settled for, you guessed it, pennies on the dollar. The mortgage holder walked away with a mere fraction of what was due, and the family walked away from a home they'd lived in for generations with nothing at all. President Herbert Hoover and his do-nothing government sat idle, watching the economy crash while crime got organized, thanks to Prohibition. The Dust Bowl spread like cancer across the Midwest, pushing farmers out of their fields and into the backwoods, building copper stills to earn quick cash with bootleg whiskey. Honest, honorable people had reached the end of their rope. The promise of the American dream had twisted into a foreboding nightmare, and my daddy, he lived through all of it. One lifelong Iowa farmer said that a slow, silent fear had settled in, fear about losing everything, jobs and savings, homes, farms, cars, children. Many of us never recovered, he said. I think it'd be fair to add that plenty only pretended to recover. Things get shoved down into a dark corner and you move on to whatever comes next, 'cause it's just too damn hard to look at what came last. My daddy, like lots of people that went through the trauma of the 30s and World War II and the 40s, especially the men, had an unspoken agreement not to talk about what hurts. So they kept their stories locked away. There's very little to say. Funny how a man so quiet could feel so damn loud. Most days, being with Daddy was like living with the early tremors of an earthquake. It's quiet now, but you know something bad is coming. We lived with those tremors for years sometimes. You're not quite sure anything is really happening, but you're damn sure scared that something's going to happen. Then without warning, the sidewalk starts moving like the ocean and things start falling off the shelves. Daddy rarely looked me in the eye, and even more rare was a conversation between the two of us, unless you consider moments of punitive judgment carried out on a little girl who didn't understand the rules as a conversation. It was his quiet anger that screamed through the halls of our home, and after a while I learned to do what had to be done to avoid it. I saw it erupt 3 times in the 18 years I lived with this man, and every time it took us all by surprise. First time was when Daddy threw the preacher out of our house. He was a friend, a good friend, and suddenly he's gone, not allowed back in. But his wife was still sitting at the table. Angry words I couldn't understand had been flung around the room. Mama was crying, but you wouldn't have known that unless you was looking right at her like I was. I remember, 'cause that was my first year of kindergarten. I went to the Christian school in town. That's where I learned my daddy wasn't the only one to be feared. God was pissed, my teachers were pissed, and on that particular day, I couldn't tell the difference between my daddy and my school. The next time was when I was 10, and my brother Evelyn Lee, who was 17, found himself smack in the epicenter of Daddy's rage. From my point of view, everything was fine, until it wasn't. That day, we didn't even get a trimmer to warn us something was coming. About a year later, it happened again. Only this time, my brother wasn't around. But I had a dog named Coco, and for some unknown reason, Daddy never liked him. Coco took the brunt of Daddy's anger that night. If you stand too close, it can be hard to see what's really happening here. But if you step out of the madness and take a breath, you can focus on what's actually going on. My former life's demise in 2010 gave me that chance. The collateral damage that surrounds that kind of ruin is heartbreaking. When it all fell apart, everywhere I looked, I saw the man I called Daddy looking back at me. It freaked me out at first, but when I stopped fighting it, things got a whole lot better. Once I learned the backstory behind the cruelty I experienced at this man's hands, I felt real compassion for what he'd gone through. But that story never came to light while he lived, And by the time he died, it was too late to find the kind of reconciliation that would have healed our wounded hearts. This kind of fear and loss seeps into the soul of the one who lives through it and poisons generations to come who never even knew it happened. Rarely spoken of, it shouted at me every day and all night long, seeping through our home, poisoning our whole family. I observed that same kind of fear and loss on January 6th. These folks weren't just my next-door neighbors or the man preaching from my childhood pulpit. They's born from the same sad stock as my daddy. They came to take back what they thought was rightfully theirs, what they believed had been stolen in the dead of night. They had been left behind, and they didn't like it one bit. Like the farmers of the Dust Bowl, men called Proud Boys and Oath Keepers were watching a select few climb their way to the top on the backs of average white folks who might as well have been their nigger slaves. To think of themselves this way, powerless, used and left out, was almost unbearable. When someone powerful showed up on the scene, like Donald John Trump, who had the balls to say out loud what they had been thinking for generations, it gave them hope. Hope that the unfairness they felt could be dealt with and things could be made right again, the kind of right they remembered from the 1950s, or better yet, the 1850s. After all, it was liberal politicians, immigrants, black folks, and God-hating atheists who had all but demolished our sacred nation. Once built on Christian values and the Word of God, we were sitting on that proverbial handbag on the edge of a very real hell. All they wanted was to put Jesus back on the throne, God back in the schools, and Trump back in the White House. They just want to stop killing babies in the womb, make sure honest, right-thinking men could keep their guns to protect their families, and if possible, move same-sex couples to another planet. Sentiments born of 150-year-old miseries were resonating in their hearts, and every cell of their body demanding attention. Experiences many of them had only heard about felt like their own, and it was time to do something about it. Time to make America great again. On January 6th, these folks might as well have been storming the banks demanding a halt to their farm's penny auction, or securing machine guns at the edge of their property to keep authorities out of their business and brewing whiskey in the backwoods. Or maybe just hanging lifeless from the barn rafters.